it's a great pleasure to welcome Jacques Malherbe, who is the CTO of Axiz. Jacques, firstly, how are you doing? Are you still working remotely? How's COVID-19 been treating you? I bet you in your career, you never anticipated or have dealt with anything of this kind of magnitude, right?
100%. Okay, this is a real artificial environment that we find ourselves in. I'm very lucky, me and my family, that's having escaped the virus up to now. So waking up every morning is a pleasant surprise. We are actually in a move to get people back to the office. So we're creating a hybrid environment, and we think as we go forward, we will obviously have to play within the regime that the government announces at the time. But yeah, we are moving back.
Well, I'm glad you're safe and well. I mean, what kind of trends have you seen? I think it's almost to the date, a few days to a year since we last went into lockdown. What are the kind of trends that you've seen from a work culture point of view as a result of COVID-19?
Yeah, I think the first thing that we realize is that a company's culture transcends the office. So the way people behave at the office and the way a company behaves, people continue to behave in that way. So what one needs to do, or what needs to pay attention to, is that there's a skill set that's missing from our staff when they work remotely. There's a higher need for collaboration. There's a higher need for in being engaged. There is this funny habit of switching the video off and then carrying on with your knitting during a meeting, which can can alienate the whole team in terms of what can be achieved. So what we've noticed is people adapt very quickly, but there are skills that need to be developed and nursed and nourished in this environment.
You touched on it earlier, these trends and how it's going to evolve into the future once this pandemic is over. We know that it's still got a long way to go. We still haven't seen the light at the end of the tunnel. You did say something about a hybrid workforce. Does this mean the way you guys see it is that it'll be like half in the office, half remote work? How do you see the future post-pandemic?
Yeah, I think we've come to some realizations with this pandemic work. We've come to some realizations, and one is that the social environment of the worker or employee is just as important as the technology and the work itself. So we have seen that people want to be together, people want to come together, people want to touch base. I've experimented with it with my customers over the last 6 months since we've opened up, is can I come and see you? Even if it is in a neutral site where there's enough space and all hygiene and all the rest of it. And everybody, bar a few regulations that are barred through regulation, said, yes, please, let's get together. So there is this social thing that we have to take care of, the social well-being, mental and emotional well-being of people in this thing. And I think we are more concerned about that balance than the control of people when they're at the office. We can see whether they're working or not. By now, people have figured out whether they want to work or not. And I think we have certainly observed a few things. First thing is productivity definitely increases at the office. We're getting more done. Secondly, the well-being and the energy of the people at the office certainly have returned. So they're working together, they're having cups of coffee together, they're catching up with each other. We've certainly seen that customer interaction is valuable when it's person to person, not necessarily just remote, specifically if you're building new relationships. So we see definitely that the future is a blend. It's a hybrid world where people will come in and leave as it suits them. Working from anywhere now is a possibility, and that's how it's going to work.
So we're learning so much about how the culture of work and how important it is to be in person, and I guess that's coming through more and more clearly. In terms of the remote workforce that you talk about, I mean, I guess at this time of the year, last year, everybody was thinking, the impossible, and soon the impossible became possible with this remote workforce. but you talk about the right resiliency solutions. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, it's actually multidimensional. The first thing that we have to have is the technology sorted out. And I think most of our collaboration providers, of which Cisco is a major one in the world, suddenly discovered that they are more enterprise suited than the person at home suited. And so there's a lot of adjustments that was made to the technology in terms of providing it easy interface for individuals, providing the ambient noise control, providing the fact that we can share screens back and forth, that we can record conversations, all kinds of things that weren't evident at the time of the lockdown. Now is like standard, standard features in the software. But that's just where it begins. You know as well as I do that if you speak to a deaf person, it's very difficult to communicate because you start using your hands and gestures and you shout louder and you do a whole bunch of things. And we find the same thing, that sometimes we find that either the connection is not there, or the technology is not up to date, or the machine is misfiring, and then it's difficult to get our message across. So there's a resilience we're talking about is number one, a safety platform where we are free from external attacks or any malware or any breaking into our meetings or listening in on meetings. Secondly, we talk about the stable technology, and then thirdly, the features that feels like I am face to face with you when I talk to you. And those things together certainly has been evolved inside the Cisco WebEx offering that we have. And it can scale now up to 3,000 people on the same call. You can have events on WebEx. So that makes it something that can scale from a one-on-one to masses of people that we address at the same time.
Now, Jacques, tell me about those Cisco offerings that you guys have got at Axiz that basically enable those remote workers to work optimally. I mean, I know there are lots of solutions. I think there's even that it's almost like a desktop. I think it's the DX80, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, that's one of many solutions that Cisco has.
Yeah, I think the short answer to that is anything you want. There's such a broad range. But Cisco, being originally or in its DNA a networking company, copes with the network requirements of video and voice very well. And I think that's where the heart of it lies. The video is a natural thing. All of us, we watch Netflix on our cell phones, so we have figured out that video is everywhere. But the fact is it runs on a network, and the network needs to be stable, the network needs to be secure, and the network needs to give priority to calls over data and so forth. And so that's the Cisco offering, is actually the holistic solution of underlying infrastructure plus application security that sits into this video and this meeting, person-to-person meeting over a machine. That we see there's been a lot of newcomers and challenges in the game, but at some point, Cisco's maturity in the networking shines through the quality that you get out of the machine.
I mean, these guys have been doing it for a very, very long time.
Very long time.
Years.
Yeah,
they understand compression. They understand what needs to. They've kind of optimized it to its best potential. I mean, in the future, do you envision that there will still be many employees who work on premise, for example?
Yes, I do. And it's got to do with the fact that we're human beings. More than it is that we'll work together. We'll get together. You won't stop it. We can see it worldwide, how the lockdowns have kind of, interfered with people's well-being. And some people have begun, like in the UK, for instance, it's been drastic. The cases of people who are not feeling, emotionally well, who are going for treatment, who needs communication. And so I think it's got to do with more than the work idea. It's got to do with the social idea that we collaborate when we are together. It works better when we're together. And so this hybrid and working back at the office, I think, will be part of it. We're also seeing now some of the major companies, global organizations like the Microsofts of the world, slowly open their offices. So it's a fact of life.
Yeah. And I think that, I was reading a fascinating study on the fatigue that you get doing these video conferences. I mean, there's a lot of stuff we don't know, and that it's really
Yes,
coming out and making itself abundantly clear that long term, it's not sustainable to do things this way. The
yeah.
business resiliency tools that you talk about that are necessary for employees, for example, who are working in offices, what are those resiliency tools?
Yeah, I think it's kind of the repeat of what we're saying for home is for the office. So I'm sitting in front of a machine. I've got my WebEx going. It's part of the network, and maybe I walk out of the office 5 minutes from now, and I have my cell phone with me, and the conversation just continues. So it is this collaboration platform world where we can talk or exchange ideas, exchange content in a safe way. It doesn't matter where we are and whether it's mobile or static, where we're sitting in the office or at home.
Mm-hmm.
It's also got to do with compensating for some very bad networking or low quality networking you have in South Africa. Remember, now our workers come from everywhere and they work from everywhere. And there's not necessarily the connectivity that one would like to see that we see in our metro areas. And it's the ability, the resilience of the platform to cope with that environment and compensate for that environment. I think that's one of the big things that we'll see as we go along is the connectivity or rural connectivity or this 5G coming and different satellite and other technologies to actually get the connectivity blanket over South Africa so that kids can remotely go to school, remotely learn. We get ourselves in a place where you are is not the key thing, but how you communicate.
Okay, very interesting. I mean, just touching back on the Cisco example you used earlier, when you look at Cisco's range of tools, do you believe that they can help enable that true hybrid workforce to really get
Yes,
to achieve that optimal
yes,
success that you're looking for? A blend of both worlds. Is
yes,
it possible?
yes. Yeah, we believe that. And we believe it not because only of the technology, but we believe it because of the partner network that Cisco, like you say, has built over many, many, many years in South Africa. In every little distant corner, remote corner of South Africa, there is a Cisco reseller sitting there somewhere who's got the tools and the training to be able to assist. There is a lot more work that needs to happen now in terms of assisting people who are at home. When we have businesses, they're all concentrated in metros mostly, and the skills are there and the people are there. But once you go remote, who's going to take care of somebody that's sitting at a farm somewhere? Who's going to take care of people who are in remote areas? And in that sense, we as Axiz are building remote management features into our services offering, remote control, remote, remediation that we can do. All of these tools we are building into our system with our resellers to be able to not only provide the technology, but be able to look after that technology and make sure that it's functioning.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Now, coming back to Axiz and your partnership together with Cisco, I mean, how can Axiz play that role with South African business to really get the full benefits of Cisco's business resiliency solutions? What do you guys offer on the table? I imagine support features pretty highly amongst that.
Yeah, I think there's two things to that, Aki. The first event in our world in South Africa is the government support for small business and the government's drive for small business. So there's a huge impetus in our business behind developing SMMEs and getting them into this Cisco play, where they have the skills, where they have the capabilities to do all the things we just spoke about in terms of certified engineers that can come to your premise, wherever you are premises, and sort problems out or do installations and maintain under SLAs those installations. So that's the first thing that is part. What is Axiz doing and what can we do is the enablement of small business. And the second thing is to build the complementary or augmented service machine behind these resellers. So if they have service 1, 2, 3, we have service 4, 5, 6. They can augment their service offerings. They don't have to have this huge capital expenditure to build this big service and support machinery up front when they walk into the business. We can scale them very quickly by augmenting their services offering. So it's the recruitment of the small business, it's the enablement, the training, and giving them the capabilities, and also in other areas, through credit and finance to help these businesses get going, and then to augment their services offering so they are capable when they stand in front of you to do the job.
Jacques, you raised such an interesting point. I mean, you've been in this IT game for a long time, and you're currently the CTO at Axiz. It's such a good point, but you mentioned that small businesses and the affordability. 5-10 years ago, for a small business to scale up to, have the same kind of services as a massive organization was almost impossible. I mean, today, this has all been democratized. The prices have come down. It's really affordable, and small businesses and medium-sized businesses have the same access to tools like Cisco that big businesses do at the same price.
Exactly that. And that's the big difference. And we also getting off this treadmill of training people. Train people and send them out in the field. Well, then you have a very well-trained car guard. We need to create opportunities for people. We need to use that training and make sure that that training can be applied. And there's opportunities not just in terms of lead generation, but financial enablement. How do you get credit when you're a one-man business starting up?
Exactly.
How do you get into that world? So there's a lot of natural barriers to entry, and we are trying as a business to overcome those barriers for small business.
Jacques Malherbe, CTO at Axiz, absolute pleasure chatting to you at the My Broadband Conference. Thank you for your insights, and we wish you well post-COVID and into the future. I mean, you've shared some interesting things with us, lots of things to think about. Thank you for your time, Jacques.
Thank you, Aki, and so nice talking to you again. You take care as well.